C'è un errore molto comune, o meglio un equivoco molto comune. Qual è? Molti pensano che Nightmare Before Christmas sia un film di Tim Burton, ma in realtà è diretto da Henry Selick, visto che Tim Burton lo ha solo fra virgolette, scritto e prodotto. Ma c'è un altro grande equivoco, sempre nel mondo dell'animazione. Ovvero molti pensano che 9, un film direi quasi sconosciuto, sia un film in stop motion, quando in realtà è un film in computer grafica che simula la stop motion. Ma questo 9 che cos'è? È davvero una piccola perla animata. È una perla animata post-apocalittica ambientata in un mondo in rovina, dove tutto è andato alle pezze. Ed è un film che potremmo definire una specie di Toy Story arrugginito che meriterebbe molta più fama di quella che ha. 9 è un mix di scenari post-apocalittici, pieno di atmosfere vittoriane decadenti ed è poetico come sarebbe un film di Tim Burton, con tanto di omaggio al cinema muto. E pensate, nasce come cortometraggio, infatti il regista Shane Hacker lo aveva realizzato nel 2005 come progetto universitario, ottenendo una nomination agli Oscar. Il successo fu tale da trasformarlo in un lungometraggio nel 2009. Come detto prima, anche se molti pensano che sia in stop motion, in realtà è in CGI, ma con una cura maniacale da simulare materiali e movimenti tipici delle marionette. E questo contribuisce a creare quell'atmosfera artigianale e inquietante che lo rende un film davvero unico, soprattutto a livello di atmosfera. I piccoli esseri di stoffa, i piccoli protagonisti, infatti, rappresentano frammenti dell'anima del loro creatore, ognuno con una personalità distinta. Non hanno nomi veri o nomi propri, ma hanno numeri, appunto da 1 a 9, un'idea simbolica e semplice che richiama la frammentazione dell'identità umana. Altra chicca, il mondo del film è ispirato a un futuro post-apocalittico dominato dalle macchine, ma senza mai mostrare esseri umani vivi. Una scelta narrativa che aumenta il senso di solitudine e mistero, perché uno si chiede chi le ha fatte quelle cose, chi le ha create. Un design visivo che diventa anche narrativo, le immagini che raccontano, come succede sempre al cinema bello, al cinema muto, ad esempio, muto come 9, perché nel film si parla poco e niente. Quando Pinocchio vince l'Oscar al miglior film animato, Guillermo del Toro urla al mondo una grande verità. Finalmente dice a tutti, l'animazione ragazzi non è un genere, è un linguaggio. E guardando 9 è quello che ti viene in mente subito, perché è un film che sembra per bambini, ci sono bambole di pezza, ci sono giocattoli, ci sono pupazzi, marionette, ma non è un film solo per bambini, è un film che come i film Pixar, anche se non è un film Pixar, ha più livelli di lettura. Quello che ti rimane più impresso, alla fine sono le domande, è un film che non dà risposte, non ti chiedi perché il mondo è finito, ma cosa rimane di quel mondo. E la bellezza a volte è qui, nei film che ti restano dentro, perché le risposte non ci sono.
Nice to meet you, Shane.
Yeah.
We love animation, so every year with Paolo we choose animated movies, and this year we've chosen 9 because we have such a big fan. I hear the
Cool.
proof of our love on this movie.
It is, what is it, 17, 15 plus years now, and since the movie was first released. If you were to write it today, not even make it, write it today, you would approach the narrative in a different way, and perhaps even technically wise, would you go through a different process? I mean, through a different complete process to tell the same story.
Of course, yes, right? I'm a different person. I'm a different filmmaker. I have much more experience. I'm more aware of the processes of how to make a film and the politics and the roles and how to navigate that kind of space. I was very young when this project first arrived, or I had this opportunity to do this project. So a lot of it was new. I was trying to, not only make a film on a really accelerated schedule with a small budget, but also just navigate the whole politics and the structure of making films in Hollywood, So I think globally I would have a much different approach. Narratively, I would probably have a different approach as well. It's hard to imagine that what I would do different or how I would approach it different, other than, I have a completely different mindset, I think, about approaching animation and films. I think the core story, I would still be wrestling and kind of exploring the same territory with that story. And I think in some ways it's kind of more relevant now that we're entering the age of AI, right? This concept of creating an artificial intelligence and who has control over that, and is it a force for good? Is it a force for bad? It really depends on who's kind of in the control seat, right? And so I don't know. I think there's still a lot of those questions and those ideas and concepts to explore.
Do you think that perhaps this movie seen today by the audience of Cinema de Mario, would you think that, given the fact that it was done when it was done, there were glimpses and projections and imagination running towards the future? AI was the Matrix or Blade Runner. Would you think an audience today would look at it and would feel a bit more maybe on the edge, or maybe more excited, there is a higher chance to get hit emotionally by the story?
I know that's a really interesting question. It would be interesting to see what the reaction is, I guess, seeing it, it's having an audience see it again. Because my focus was more focused on like the Oppenheimer tale, right? So it was kind of coming out of the Cold War, or that situation once we had created this massively destructive scientific achievement, and then sort of the downfall and the regret and the struggle that Oppenheimer had after creating something like this, right? It was a blind pursuit of this scientific achievement, but of course it was put into the hands of people that might not have the same restraint or control or understanding the danger of this technology. So I think it's very relevant to where we are today in a lot of ways, right? So I wonder if the audience would make those parallels and what would be their reaction to that. Yeah.
Shane, I think that 9 is so fascinating because of its lore, of its decaying world, dark imaginary. Have you worked on its lore since the short movie, or did you expand the lore because of the movie?
Yeah, so so the feature there was a lot of exploration, expansion, and reimagination. I didn't have the whole world and backstory worked out when I did the short. I wanted that to be the backdrop. In a lot of ways, the short was simpler because there were just broad conceptual ideas that created the world in the background. It wasn't anything too specific, right? I just wanted the backdrop to be this kind of bleak, destroyed world, and the ragdoll characters were like Phoenix rising from the ashes, right? They were from that world and of that world, but what separated them from that world was that they had the spark of humanity in them. They had this positive, creative spirit within them, which I feel like is something that humanity has the potential of and has to offer. And so they were rising up out of that and finding a creative way to overcome the obstacles presented by that world, and to create a new creative path and civilization going forward. So it was really pretty broad. So when I was approaching the feature, it was about diving deeper into what that history might have been, where those characters came from. So in a lot of ways, it's sort of their journey of self-discovery, of asking these kinds of existential questions that we as humans ask, is like, who am I? Where did I come from? What's my purpose here? What's the meaning of all this? So there was quite a bit of invention that happened, to expand to the feature. And now we're also seeing a larger cast of characters too. So it's exploration about who they all are, what makes them distinct, how do they form a society, and things like that.
I think that 9 is a sort of wonderful tribute to silent cinema, because it's a movie that works also without dialogues. And so how did you approach the characters' emotion through the animation of their eyes? Because I think that is a movie is founded on their big eyes, and I think that Tim Burton like this approach. I don't know if you can the role of the eyes in your movie in 9.
Yeah, so when I did the short, it was one of my conceits was, okay, I'm going to do a non-verbal film. It's just going to be pure design and pantomime to tell the story, to impart the emotion. And I really wanted to give myself that challenge, because I think that is film at its purest, just visual storytelling. And so I put a lot of challenges in my way, and one of which was that they are mechanical, right? So they have just mechanical can eyes, there isn't a whole lot of expression to be had from them. And so it really became about using the whole body to express emotion. So it's almost like comedia, right? It's like how you pose the whole body to tell the audience who the character is, what they're feeling. And then the eyes are quite simple. They could just blink. They could dilate. So, that was a way that I could express emotion too. But it forced me to animate the whole body, right? And staging became important, and where you put the camera, the height of the camera, how the camera moves, what you reveal. I think that by giving yourself these creative constraints, it forces you to come up with creative solutions, and it pushes you as a filmmaker and a visual storyteller. That was kind of my approach to that. I was also inspired by stop motion filmmakers like Jan Svankmajer and their brothers Key, in that they would embrace the idea that these are artificial characters they're creating, right? They would show the bits and pieces, the mechanical parts. They would be made out of materials or objects that you wouldn't normally associate with being animated characters, whether it's calipers or compasses or gears or just clay or meat, And so I thought that was really interesting. How could I, again, just really expose all that? It's like it's presenting itself as artificial and non-human and non-living, but can I still get an emotional reaction with an audience? Can an audience see humanity in something that's presenting itself as being other? So that, again, was all those ideas were kind of put into the short, and I think that's what inspired people or got people excited by the film and wanted me to kind of expand upon that.
What you just said leads me to the next question, that is about the content and the box. Animations are a box that is usually put together and wrapped and designed and thought to be destined only to a young audience. Whereas very often then the content of the box is definitely not a story for children. Would you think that 9 at the time, and even now, maybe to today's audience, would give the tools to grown-ups and children to look at animations with different eyes, talking about eyes, just with through different lenses, and see, all right, animation is a vessel the story can benefit from?
Yeah, well, I think that we've seen now, as far as in the animation space, the expansion of stories that can be told. We are seeing, I think, darker material, more sophisticated material that might not, be what you would expect from like a Hollywood animation from 10 or 15 years ago or 20 years ago. So I think I always felt like there was an appetite for that. When I made 9, and I was looking at films that were coming from Europe or films that were coming from Asia, and there was much more sophistication in the storytelling, in the design, in the and also a lot more edge, and would deal with more complex and some darker material, I think. I'm not sure the American audience was exposed to a lot of that, so that was kind of one of my interests, was to try to bring some of these stories, because I felt like, for whatever reason, animation had been sort of painted into or put into like you said, a box that was just for children, just children's entertainment. But the movies that I was growing up, the early Spielberg movies, there was a lot of darkness. There's like, in E.T., there's straight up horror, I feel, in that. There's a lot of challenging material. It's not talking down to the audience. It's dealing with complex issues like divorce and things like that too, and children feeling kind of alienated or alone. And so I felt like, look, I think kids can handle this information. They can handle these kinds of stories. They can handle some darkness and horror. I mean, you look at like the early Grimm's fairy tales, they're quite dark, and I think children are actually kind of attracted to that kind of darkness. I think they like stories that engage them on like multiple emotional levels. So I felt like I was making a movie that I would enjoy as an adult, or I would also enjoy as that 10 or 12-year-old kid that was like gravitated towards horror and some of these more edgy science fiction movies when I was growing up too. So I feel like there is a fascination, and I think kids are naturally drawn to this, and I think that there is a way to make movies that appeal to both adults and children, and can kind of, I think animation can cover a lot more territory than typically it has been in the past. So.
Yes, of course. Starting with the ragdoll, can a person, whether it is a grown-up or a child, empathize and relate by looking at a ragdoll struggling through? Well, I guess we can. So I think.
Well, I think children, they like from the very beginning, I think they, all their toys, I think they imbue like life into all their toys, like their teddy bears or their dolls. I feel like they feel like they are also living creatures, that they are.
They're sorry if they're not playing with their favorite toys for a while, and they want to know how the afternoon is being. So
I think that is the secret of the success of a lot of Pixar movies like Toy Story. There are a lot of levels of storytelling,
and I think that just as humans, we are storytellers, and I think that's a lot of the ways that we process the world, is that we invent stories about things, and we I think kids are great examples of that. I think they have just these immense imaginations where they, anything is possible for them, and I think it's so easy for them to slip into an imaginary world and then back into the real world. And I think they're always kind of inventing stories, and whether it's through the objects around them or ways that they're kind of processing and understanding the world. And so in a way, I think I was just tapping into that, maybe subconsciously, because that's the way that I've always existed in the world. It's like I'm always slipping in and out of like these stories in my heads and these worlds and these stories that I'm imagining, and like any opportunity, any still moment, I kind of drift off into all these millions of stories that are floating around in my head. And I don't know, I think it's easy for kids to take. I think it's easier, like you were saying, for kids to take that leap of faith into an animated world and into imbuing life or believing in these characters than it is for some adults.
One last question, very simple. Yeah. And what was the last animated movie that really impressed you?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was really blown away by Flow. I think that goes back to your earlier question, like the challenge that filmmaker put upon himself was, how do I tell a feature-length film with no dialogue, just pure visual, and with a character that we just go along this journey and we're kind of seeing and making discovery through this character, and the world is not real, right? It's this kind of metaphorical. I mean, it's real in some way, but it's also this metaphorical journey that the character's on. And so I just thought that was really beautiful and imaginative, and that it could capture my attention and intentions of my kids. And it's like a movie that I really felt myself leaning into, right? And really paying attention to every little detail, because the story is fragmented and it's there, but it's not not concrete, or it's not hitting you over the head. And so you're really, it's a really active film where I feel like I was really engaged, right? And you're in a way I was inventing story with it. Right? And I think that's the story that I created for that film might be different than the story that you created or that my kids created, right? Because it's not trying to explain everything. But I think those kinds of films, animated films, are what really engage me as an audience member and also as a filmmaker. Like, oh wow, I can learn a lot from this kind of a film. And the fact that it was such a like independent, like scraping my money together and finding a team and using Blender and these tools that are a little bit outside the normal production pipeline. I just thought even the story behind the making I thought was really compelling. So
thank you so much, Shane. Thank you for
Shane.
your time.
You gave us more than we expected. I mean,
thank
you. I really
thank
felt
you so much for
the value of the
pleasure.
interview.
So welcome everyone. Thanks for coming this evening. I hope you really enjoy the film. It's my pleasure that it's being shown to you here at Cinema de Mare So yeah, kick back, dig your toes in the sand, and enjoy the show.